Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And today's guest is going to tell us a little bit about self-love and self-healing. Her name is Gurds Hundal. She is an empath educator, self-healing expert, author, generational pattern shifter, coach, and host of the Inner Light Project podcast. Gurds takes a holistic approach to helping her clients identify what's holding them back and provide tools to help them be their own healer. That's really powerful. She is the author of the book titled Educo, 52 Quotes for a Better Life, which is the starting place for those who want to learn self-awareness, self-acceptance, and inner peace. Gurds, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just so grateful to be on the show. And this is our second time we're speaking. And I'm just really excited to just talk with you today.
We kind of, I was on your podcast a few weeks ago and we had this incredible connection, like soul sisters. But of course, I'm at least one generation older than you, which is fantastic. Because you talk about generational pattern shifting, and I want to talk about that later. So just to begin with, tell the audience how you got into the path and started on this incredible path of self-healing and helping other women find that same inner peace and healing.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Wow. So we're going back almost 10 years ago of my life. I was sat in a hospital. I was unhappy with my life. I was a former journalist. I was a people pleaser, self-sacrificer, a doormat. I was always giving to the point of exhaustion. I was the type of friend that would listen to people's problems till 3 a.m. in the morning. If you called me, I was there. And so at that point in my life, I remember it very clearly still now, it was July 2012. And I got to a point where I was just sick of everything, thinking, why is my life not moving forward? Why am I so unhappy? And at that point, I actually had a cancer scare. And I guess that was the universe saying to me, like, it's time to heal. But at that point, I didn't understand. And, you know, most of us, when we're going through that moment of feeling sorry for ourselves, I was like, what did I do to deserve this? What have I done? And as I sat there in the waiting room in the hospital, I heard a voice say, you created this. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And I looked around the room, Cheryl, and there was nobody there. And I was like, oh, am I going crazy? Like, that's the first reaction I had.
Chances are.
Yeah. And oh gosh, and then I got asked to come into the room to see the doctor, and then the doctor said, we misdiagnosed you. You're absolutely fine. And I kid you not, I walked out of the hospital and I cried and I heard, it's time to heal. And that just took me on this crazy, amazing, beautiful journey of just trusting from within. I remember going home that night. I lived in a flat with 2 other girls, and I went home. I wrote 30 pages on my life in 7 hours. I have no idea how I did this to this day. I saw all my patterns, all my trauma. I looked in front of the mirror and I cried and I said, I need to love myself.
Aww.
And it just, yeah, it was very emotional, but very powerful moment in my life. Like, I think I already knew that I needed to change, but having that cancer scare is what actually forced me to change. And so just on that journey, I decided to surrender. I took a year to come out of the journalism world, because still I was like, oh, I've worked so hard to be a journalist. Like, I can't let this go. But I was always interested in health journalism anyway. So that was my healing, was always that in a way. And then I just went on this journey of like loving myself, clearing patterns, forgiving people. I ended up getting a radio show, and like I co-hosted this with somebody, and we used to interview so many different people from the self-healing world. And I just went into this journey without even actually thinking about it. I just dived in. And the more I dived in, the more I healed, the more I noticed my patterns, the more I kept peeling off social, familial, ancestral, cultural, societal, financial, you name it, work patterns. And obviously this was not overnight, guys. Like this is over 10 years, this is almost 10 years of healing. But the more I dove in, the more I realized who I was. And as I peeled off the layers, even as a woman, we don't realize how much patriarchy affects us. You know, the people pleasing comes from patriarchy. The sacrificing comes from patriarchy. It also comes from culture. And me being Indian and growing up in an Indian culture, even though I was born in the UK, I was acting like a good girl. I was putting on the show. You know, everything is amazing outside, but on the inside, I was an utter mess. So that's probably the best way I can describe how I got to that point. It was messy. It was not easy. However, it was worth it.
It's so funny because you're using the same words. It was messy. It wasn't easy, and it was worth it. And just in the previous episode that I recorded, before this one, my guest said the exact same thing. And so basically,
wow.
the message to the audience is, it isn't easy and it isn't pretty, but it certainly is worth the effort. And now, how old were you when you had that epiphany?
So I was 24, turning 25 at the time. So it was coming up to my 25th birthday.
So that's an incredibly young age to have that kind of self-awareness and that kind of insight to be able to turn your life around. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, because you were a journalist, and like you said, that you had to work very hard to get that position. And that's something that I would imagine would be part of your self-image. It's part of who you were. And to let that go would have been incredibly difficult because you worked so hard to get there, especially as a woman.
Also, as a woman of color, people don't realize the journalism world is very predominantly white, very male orientated. But even as a woman, you have to go through the sexism, you get judged. But being a person of color as well, like I had to constantly prove myself. So like my self-worth was proving myself. So my power was being taken away in the journalism world. And that took me a long time to realize, actually, why am I working so hard to prove myself? Who am I proving myself to?
Right, right. Who are you trying to, air quotes, please?
Yes. But I was pleasing everybody.
Except yourself.
My family, my friends, my culture, everything except for me. So that was another layer on top that I needed to let go. And like you said, it was very hard. It took me 1 year to actually say, actually, no, I need to walk away. But it was the most powerful moment in my life. Like I'm just grateful for that journey, because it allowed me to do so many different things. Like I ended up working with young people, helping them to produce films. I had the radio show. I wrote a book. I started coaching. I started speaking on stages. I trained people up. Like I did so many different things in that moment. And I really found out who I was. And if that didn't happen, I wouldn't know who I am right now.
Wow. So that was a pivotal moment, of course, in your life, and making that decision. And when we make a major life change like that, of course, we're going through so much, and it takes so much effort and concentration and self-awareness to do that. But oftentimes, well, I want to say probably all the time, the people around us and the people that we are closest to, who should be supporting us, applauding our efforts and saying, what can I do to help you? That usually doesn't happen that way, does it?
I'm laughing, you can tell. Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I think my family thought I was crazy. Because, you go through life being this particular person, and then suddenly you're changing and everyone's like, what's happened to her? But also when you're a people pleaser, and as a woman, you're so used to giving your time and energy to everybody else. But when you start saying no, people don't like it, because they're so used to taking advantage of you. They're so used to you behaving in the way they want you to behave. And the moment you say no, some people will either respect it, which is very rare. And then most people will literally just try to manipulate you, abuse you, try to say that you've changed, and, try to drag you back to your old self. And the key in that moment is to realize, are these people around you going to uplift you, or are they going to drain you? And you have to be smart enough in that moment to realize it's okay to let go of certain relationships, friendships, social settings that you were so used to be yourself. Like I was a drinker, like I'm 9 years sober now, and I was around a lot of people who were drinking. The moment I said, no, I'm not drinking, people thought I was joking. 3 months went by, 6 months went by, I had no longer a friend, who literally, when I said I don't want to drink, tried to pour a drink down my throat. And I said no, and I've had to push them away, and I haven't spoken to them ever since. So there are people like that who will try to force you to go back to your old patterns, but you have to realize that this life is yours. You were here to be the person that you're supposed to be. The divine created you as a reason. You following everybody else is not going to help you shine your inner light. It's going to dim it. And other people around it might enjoy that your light is dimmed because their light is dimmed too. So as you evolve and as you grow and as you have self-love and self-respect for yourself, you will attract the right people into your life, the ones who love you, the ones who respect you. And obviously you can't say goodbye to all family and relationships, it's very hard to do that. But there's some circumstances which you have to, but you create boundaries. You create strong boundaries, and they're going to walk over them a few times, but you just keep placing those boundaries. The more you place it, the more drama there will be for a bit, but it'll get easier. And slowly they'll start to see they can no longer take advantage of you, and they can't drain your energy. Yeah.
So this is the second time you actually told me that story about that. Again, we're using air quotes here. Friend, trying to pour a drink down your throat. And I mean, I got chills again. And I became incensed thinking that anybody would do that to somebody else, because that is such a violation of your personal space and your physical, space as well. And, your own desires and what you want to do for your life. And the fact that's a downright assault, in my opinion, to do that, especially, forcing somebody to take a substance or trying to force them to take a substance. And that is when that this person really needs to leave my life, need to just cut her out.
Well, it got worse, actually. Like, there'd been times before, but I kind of chose to ignore it, because back then, again, I loved seeing, goodness in everybody, because that's how I was raised. Like, everyone is good, don't get me wrong, but not everybody is good for you. That's the key to remember. And so this person was never happy for me when I had success, would always be jealous or complain. And also there was a time where they told me that my dreams were ridiculous. And I remember sat there like, who are you? So I chose to ignore those. And then that situation happened with a drink. And I was like, right, it's time to let go. And even after that, actually, I gave them another opportunity, because again, my heart was still like, oh, but you should forgive people. And, I did forgive, but I started to see the patterns again. And that's when I actually walked away. But that's natural when you're starting to heal, because you're so used to giving people chances. But as you heal and you know yourself and you have that self-awareness, then you see the signs once, twice, done.
So you're a very compassionate person. So, and that's where things get kind of tricky there, because people think, or, people listening to this podcast, or especially women, might think that, their role is to be able to be compassionate and to take care of people and to help people. But you have to have that level of compassion for yourself first, so you can take care of yourself and your own needs before you take care of other people.
100%. And don't get me wrong, the journey after that hasn't been all beautiful and magical. I'm running around in flowers or anything, or there were situations again where I had to learn that. So there was a time I collapsed. This was in 2015, with severe pains in my right kidney. And a friend of mine called me, friend again, we'll put quotations, called to say, are you okay? But suddenly within 2 minutes, the conversation was about her guy problems. And I'm sat there in the ambulance with an air mask on, going, yeah, but can't even breathe properly. And I'm thinking, I could be dead right now, and this person doesn't care. So again, the universe was always teaching me lessons, but again, I was choosing not to hear them fully. So these big things kept happening. But even then, in 2017, I had a kidney operation, and I honestly believe it was the best thing that happened to me, because it helped me to slow down and trust myself even more and pay attention to who I was around. Again, when I had the kidney operation, people were demanding things off me. I told them I was,
goodness.
Yeah. the world is selfish. People are selfish. And if you don't look after yourself, people will walk over you. If you have compassion, people will take it. They don't care if you're on your deathbed, they'll take it. You know, even when you're sick, people will come over to see you, but then they'll whinge to you about their life problems. And you're like, hold up, I'm going through a really severe thing in my life. And now you're talking about your boy issues or your husband issues or your girlfriend issues. And you're like, I feel more drained now. Do I really need this in my life? Probably not. But again, these are pockets of wisdom that the universe has been teaching me over time. So that's why I'm very protective of my energy and my time and who I surround myself, because the more you allow people to complain at you or like take advantage of you, the more it sucks the life out of you and your life.
And the more they do it.
Yeah, they think
because they've got a wonderful audience. I mean, a beautiful, compassionate young woman who's going to listen to everything, even though she's got an oxygen mask, on her face, and she's in an ambulance just being rushed to the hospital. I mean, my goodness, who wouldn't take advantage of that, right?
Another situation, but again, the universe is like, had to learn this lesson. I was in Canada. I was 22 years old. I was working for CTV National News, and I was overworking. I was just this person that just overworked, overserved, tried to help everybody. And I collapsed and my left arm stopped working. And the person that took me, won't mention any names, decided to tell me about how they want to leave their husband. And I'm sat there like, in the hospital, like, am I listening to this or am I trying to focus on myself? Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So I just was not very good at listening to the signs.
Well, you finally did. You finally learned. And
I got the message.
Thank goodness. And you used a word several times, the word selfish, and that people are selfish. And that's one of the things growing up that I was always told how selfish I was. And not to be so selfish because, I had to, be taking care of other people or more concerned about their needs and stuff. And that bit me in the butt as I got older, because trying not to be selfish, but that really is not a bad thing. Being selfish, if you're not the one looking after your own self, who the heck is? It's certainly not the woman, talking about her husband when there you are with an arm that's completely non-functional. Once again, going to the hospital, probably in an ambulance, right?
Yeah. Do you know what it is? It's selfish comes from patriarchy. It's there to control women. We just don't realize it. And, I'm in my mid-30s now, but like, even with yourself, you've probably seen from your generation and your mother's generation, women are always told that they're selfish, but when do men get told they're selfish?
Never, that I know of. I mean, I have never heard or been right. Exactly. Of course, even when I grew up, I mean, I had 4 sisters and 3 girl cousins. Yes, indeed. So, yeah, which is why I live out here in Colorado. I was born in a small steel town in Western Pennsylvania. And as soon as I graduated college, it's like, it's time to just test my own wings and find out who I really am. Out of this protective bubble and even controlling bubble of the family in a small town and stuff, and just, wanted to come out here and see who I was. So you just have to do that sometimes.
I'm completely the same. I came from a small city and was like, time to spread my wings. I need to know myself. And I think when you do that as a woman, it's so powerful, because then that people-pleasing habit will slowly die away, because you don't have people in your ear going, you're selfish. You are out there trying to make something of yourself. So in that moment, you're not focusing on pleasing everybody. You're focusing on making something of yourself. But I just want to go back to the bit about women and why we are told we're selfish. It's to do with the patriarchy to control us. And, even within my culture, like being in the Indian culture, oh my God, you don't do this, you're selfish. You don't go to the temple, you're selfish. You don't go and help that person, you're selfish. It's ingrained from you from a young age. But we're not designed that way. That's culture and society that's created this for us. So when somebody tells me I'm selfish now, I'm like, thank you, I'm taking care of myself. And they're like, oh, I'm like, don't you take care of yourself first? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, well, I'm doing the same. So when a man says that to me, I say it back. But they don't like it because they're used to you just, yes, okay.
Whatever you say.
Yeah. Yes. But then I'm seen as a nuisance. by older generations. But it's like, no, if men have the right to have a voice, so do women. We are not selfish for putting ourselves first. Like, hey, if we don't put ourselves first, I've learnt my lesson, you'll get ill. If you don't put yourself first, you'll sacrifice your needs going around not living your divine purpose that you were here to do. The divine created for you for a reason. He gave you the wisdom, or he or she up there, to do that in this life. And when someone calls you selfish, actually it's taking you away from the gifts that they gave you.
That is so beautifully. No, that is so beautifully said. Once again, you gave me chills, because I just love hearing that. And I want to go back to family issues, because I always tell my friends that, when they start talking about family issues or whatever is going on in their lives and with their families, I always just listen. And when they're finally done, I just patiently explain to them, and I ask them, do you know why we have friends? And they look at me, and I said, it's because we have family. And we get to choose our friends. And those friends who are treating us like our families would, maybe, a little bit, abrasive, abusive, demanding, not listening to us, those are the friends that need to go away. And you did such a beautiful job of doing that. So for the listeners who are right now, as they're hearing these words, they have that mental picture of that one or two friend or friends in their lives that they really want to, show them the door and say, you're not welcome here anymore. How would you coach them, or how would you encourage them to do that in a way that is empowering to them?
I would say have a heart-to-heart conversation with them. Just say, you just want to just be honest with them, because I think people deserve a chance. Because sometimes people don't know they're actually hurting you and they're upsetting you until you say it. You can build a picture in your head and think, how dare this person hurt me, and how dare this person treat me this way. But if you don't tell them, how do they know, and how can they change? So I would start with just thinking what you would like to say to them. So tell them how you feel, because when you share how you feel, that's where vulnerability is created. Be vulnerable with them, share how you're feeling, share that you didn't like the way they treated you or how they did this to you, and hear them out. If they start, being defensive, then you kind of know, let me just take a step back. So the next step would be to take a step back, just work on yourself, distance yourself for a bit, and see how they respect you and your boundaries. If they don't, again, take another step back. So you're giving 3 chances in a way. Some people you just need to cut out. If they're toxic, and that person that I was saying about the drinking thing, let them go. You don't even need to explain yourself. Sometimes you don't even need to explain yourself. And it can be hard for some people to understand, but it's not your job to constantly over-explain yourself. But if somebody is there that you care about, then have a conversation heart to heart and say, this is how you made me feel. I've had people reach out to me from the past, actually, out of the blue, have called me after 4 or 5 years and said, I'm really sorry for what I did. And I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. I've had even people I've met at random places, I've seen them a few years later and say, I'm really sorry for the way I treated you. And I'm like, wow. Because they were used to me being that way. So they were used to taking advantage of me. As I grew and I moved back, they realized that wasn't right. And they knew that boundaries were overstepped. And, there's some people I've kept back in my life, and some people I've just said, thank you, and I appreciate it, and moved forward. But there's so much power just talking to somebody and saying how you feel. But again, remembering that not everybody's going to, react the way you'd like them to react. You also need to be aware of that. But that's some of the things that I've done in my life and with my clients. Is I think the key is to have that chat. If you can't have a chat, cut them out. There's just 2 options, I would say.
I love the way that you said, thank you, I appreciate it, and let them go.
Yeah.
And because I don't know if I told you this, I had a friend, we had been best and dearest friends for 30 years, and I had to cut her out of my life. Oh yeah, that one was tough. Yeah. That one was really tough. And, it got to the point where it was so bad. I had gone through a trauma in my life and trying to get through that self-healing and, recovery and everything. So my life was pretty much falling apart. And she had been getting on my nerves for several years. And, it was like, okay, you got that, 2x4, proverbial 2x4 across the head, the universe talking to me, or the divine saying, hey, when are you going to let go of this? And I had to, I mean, how do you break up with somebody after 30 years? And how do you tell them that you haven't liked them for the past 15 and we're trying to figure out how to break up with them for the past 10? You really can't do that. And plus, it was even more complicated because I used to see her. We took ballet classes together. So I would see her in ballet class at least 3, maybe 4 times a week. So I couldn't have that conversation with her because I knew. I mean, she had become so toxic and so had her husband that I just needed to pull away. So I stopped answering the phone. I stopped returning, texts and calls and emails. I went to a different ballet studio and changed my dance, schedule, anything I could do. And of course, as I was pulling away, she was trying to reach out and suck me back in. So it was a little challenging, but the day that I knew that we were done, it was such a happy day. And it felt like somebody took a 50-pound weight off of the top of my head.
Ooh, I have goosebumps.
I mean, and even when she would walk into a room, it was like a thundercloud just walked in and covered the entire space. When they were over my house, I would open the windows after they left and burn some sage. I'm not even sure if I was doing it right, but yeah, I would sage my house. I would.
See, that's probably a person that constantly is a chronic complainer, and being around a chronic complainer just is very draining for people in general. Like, they're never happy. They don't want to be happy for others. They're actually happy when you're sad, which is sad.
And it wasn't even as much the complaining, because of course that was definitely part of it, but the way she would tear apart other people. She became very condescending and very arrogant about it. So it was like, this is not a healthy person. I don't have the effort to put into trying to help her heal herself. So it was just let her go.
See, the key there is it's never actually the person that's complaining. It's never actually about the person they're complaining. It's about their own trauma, and that person might have triggered them, but they can't see it because they're mirroring whatever they're feeling. But they don't want to accept it. So instead of actually accepting, actually, maybe this is affecting me, they will blame the other person. And those people will chronically complain all the time. And they'll always play the victim and say, they did this to me, they did that. But actually, what was your role in that situation? How did you make them feel? How did you help them grow?
And taking that kind of personal responsibility for, that situation. That brings me to another little point that you like to talk about, and that is self-awareness. And I saw this on your website, and I think it was either in regards to the book or just in regards to your coaching. I'm not sure which one, but it was self-awareness is key. And I wrote that down. I even wrote it down in red ink. You probably can't see on the screen there, but I did. I wrote it now. The light, there you go.
Yeah,
I wrote it down in red ink. That self-awareness is key. And I started to laugh because that's actually the chapter 1. That's the title of my first chapter in my first book. And it's self-awareness is the key to success in anything you do. So talk about that, because I think that's, we toss that phrase around, but I think a lot of people don't even know exactly what that means. If it's, kind of like this woo-woo getting into, it's just uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. It's also sometimes referred to as mindfulness and being mindful.
Yeah. However, I think the way I see self-awareness is when you peel off the layers of your life and you peel off the layers of your trauma, you become self-aware of patterns around you. So like, for example, with me, with clients, I can see as they're talking, I'm like, right, that's an ancestral pattern. That's a cultural problem. That's a society problem. I can pick up. That is when you've healed yourself, you can then become aware of your emotions, your feelings, and how you react. We're not perfect. All of us make mistakes. There's times I've shouted at people, they've shouted back at me, and thought, oh wait, was it me or was it them? That's self-awareness. That's paying attention to how you're treating people. Like, what did they do that triggered you? Is it something from your childhood? Is it something that somebody said growing up? Was it a previous relationship that made you feel that way? That's how I see self-awareness, is paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, how you respond, how you feel about other people as well. Like if you're very angry towards somebody, like is it really about that person? Or is it something that happened to you? Or did they trigger something within you? Like on social media, I get a lot of haters. On Instagram, I get people, but it's because I've triggered something in them that we're afraid to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I see self-awareness, is that it's paying attention to your thoughts, listening to yourself, calming down the chatter, and just asking yourself questions. Like, even if you feel like you don't have self-awareness, you can ask yourself, what do I feel? What do I need right now? How do I feel? Why does that person make me upset? Why am I angry? It's kind of questions like that. I don't know if I've answered the question, but that's
actually that's awesome. And I'm sitting here just shaking my head because I'm thinking, how could anybody, how could she have haters? How could anybody, respond to something that you post in a way that's hateful? But then it's like, oh yeah, I know people pretty well. So,
I know it's nothing to do with me. It's just I've triggered something. Don't get me wrong. In the beginning of my journey, I used to be like, oh, what have I done to deserve this? Like, I had trolls like a few years ago back in a different country because of something I'd written in my newsletter. And this woman who I'd actually interviewed got so mad that she got all her fans to attack me. I had hundreds of emails. Yeah, it was a very horrible time in my life. And I sat there thinking, what have I done to deserve this? Who am I? Like, I just want to help people. And it took me a long time to realize it was nothing to do with me. It was to do with her own trauma. It was to do with something within there that triggered her, but it wasn't me. But she kept blaming me. And this person had their wedding that year and said, oh, I've ruined their wedding. And I'm like, what? You had your wedding beforehand. It just contradicted everything they said. But I realized that I already had an awareness of this person already, but I chose to ignore it. I knew she was trying to use me, but I wasn't paying attention. And she would like write on her social media saying, oh, she's got loads of followers. So it was not about me. It was the fact that I had more numbers than her and she wasn't happy where she was in her life. So she needed something to make herself feel better, target her. But it took me a long time to realize that, Cheryl. And then over the years, when I've had people troll or send negative vibes, or, I've had hate messages, I just go, send them love. I'm like, it's nothing to do with me. It's their trigger. You can't save everybody. You can't fix everybody.
Right.
They just have to create their own awareness.
I'm just sitting here thinking that, boy, you must have some incredible superpower to be able to destroy somebody's wedding when you're not even there.
Which happened beforehand.
That's amazing. How could you do that? You went back in time and from this long distance and ruined her wedding. My goodness.
Sure. That's what I mean. People will blame people for how they feel or what's happened in their life, but actually not holding themselves accountable. They're looking for an excuse to blame people. Social media is a great place to blame people. Like when that happened, I remember a friend of mine telling, bless him, oh, he's so sweet. He was like, you never know who's on the other end. It could be an elderly grandma.
That's true. That's true.
So I started to see it differently, and I send them love, or I don't respond, and I just let them be. It's nothing to do with me. It's to do how they feel, and you just have to move forward, because when you know in your heart you're doing the right thing, you're gonna get haters. That's just the way social media works, unfortunately.
Well, it's social media, but it's even, I think that our society has turned into that to a certain degree. And I was having this conversation with another friend of mine yesterday, and I said, I love the fact that I can just walk into a room and offend somebody just by walking into the room. So I've learned to embrace it and say, you're going to offend not only one person, but you could be offending a lot of people at the same time, but it's nothing I've done. It's just something that's going on with themselves, and they need to figure it out for themselves, because I think that would be a very painful way to live.
But you see, what you said though in that moment is they were triggered by you. They're triggered by your light because you've done your healing. They're triggered by it. And when somebody hasn't started their inner work of healing, they want what you have. So you'll also get the opposite, the energy zappers, who will kind of like target you or like want to spend more time with you, and they want to question and quiz you. There's those people as well. But also you have the people that see your light and they're like, oh, how dare she have that? It does happen. Or they're intimidated. I've had, oh, I'm intimidated by you, and I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. And I'm like, what? Okay, great. I'm just being happy, but not everybody is happy, right? Our society is not happy. But that's when we have to go back to our inner child. You know, you and I have gone back to our inner child. So we're living from that inner child place where we're free and happy and silly. And it doesn't matter what age we are, but not everybody's at that stage.
Yeah, it's when you take the weight of the world off of your shoulders, you can have that childlike joy and quality and playfulness that we used to have when we were little, that, you know, life just, and society and everything else just kind of sucks out of us as we start to grow up. So going back to that sure is a lot of fun.
And that triggers a lot of people.
Yeah, I just had, this is so funny because I actually had, there was a ballet class I used to take up in Boulder, and it was a small group of women, and we would get really deep into not just dance, but body movements and, you know, emotions and all kind of things. It was really a wonderful learning experience. And there was an older woman there. And one time my teacher said something, she was talking, and she used me as an example. She said, well, you look at Cheryl, she has big energy. And this woman just said, oh, what a nice way of saying it. And it was like, excuse me? If you want to see big energy, you know, you just triggered some energy release in me. Isn't that funny? What a nice way of putting it.
Wow. But again, that's jealousy, right? Like somebody who's unhappy in their own skin. So they think, oh, what is it about her? Ugh. That was more, it was envious, really. That's what it sounds like. But again, you've got to still shine your light, because people, no matter who you are, where you're from, people are still going to be unhappy, you know. And I think as you grow and evolve, keep shining that light, because it might trigger people, but it might also help them to awaken a little bit and pay attention to themselves and like, why am I not happy? What can I do to be happy? So actually you probably triggered her that day thinking, oh, why has she got so much big energy? What can I do?
Well, let me tell you, I would rather have people envy me than pity me.
I like that.
Yeah. So if there's a choice, I'll take the envy any day and learn how to deal with that. So Gurds, tell us about your book.
Gosh, so this book is very old.
Is it really?
Yeah, gosh, it was in 2015. Well, it might not seem
that's
long
not
ago.
that old.
I've evolved so much since then. So I'm actually working on my second book, which is all about trauma and like how to heal it. So this book of quotes, this is like, I'll call my little baby.
Okay.
This was created when I went on my healing journey in 2012. I started sharing my emotions on social media, but I was so afraid in the beginning. I was like, oh, is people going to judge me? What are they going to think?
Ooh, yeah.
But the more I did it, the more easier it got. So I didn't realize my words were affecting people. I would get personal messages like, oh my God, your quotes inspired me. I'm like, oh, thank you. Or I want the confidence that you have in this quote. I'm going to be you today. I'm like, okay. Thanks. Yeah, just random people or people that I grew up with or like strangers. But the quotes that I had, like the book that itself, the 52 quotes, it was the journey that I went on from 2012 to 2015 of finding myself, discovering myself, coming back home to myself. So that's what the quotes are about. It's looking at forgiveness, it's looking at self-love, it's looking at acceptance, it's looking at being yourself, living your purpose. So that's what the quotes are about. If I'm honest, I resonate with a lot of the quotes, but maybe one or two I'd probably change them. But you know, that's because my journey is different now.
Right.
However, that was just a very powerful moment in my life creating that, because people kept asking me, how do I heal? And I was like, and at that point I hadn't created my coaching program. So that's when I said, take this book, read these quotes, and it will start to bring that self-awareness. Educo is a Latin word to educate, self-aware. So that's why I created it.
Okay. And now tell us about the second book that you're working on. I think that's very exciting.
Oh gosh, this book is just, I don't know, it's actually, it's very powerful. It's going to help you to self-heal yourself. It's going to help you to no longer rely on coaches, psychologists. It's going to help you to get to the root cause of your trauma. So it's really about peeling off the layers, discovering who you truly are, balancing your energies, loving yourself unconditionally, trusting your inner wisdom. And I think a lot of people don't realize I get a lot of message, how can I trust my inner wisdom? How can I trust my gut? When you heal your trauma, it's so easy to hear your inner wisdom. But when you're stuck in trauma, it's very hard to hear yourself. Instead, you'll be listening to everybody else except yourself. So I really teach in the book how to actually unpeel these layers, and all the healing modalities that I've used over the years. There's probably I've probably experienced more than 50 odd healing modalities in the last 10 years. So it's the ones that I found that really work the best. And it's based on my coaching program as well. So there's things in there which will help them to really peel off the layers and come back home to themselves. Because I want people to be able to live freely and not be stuck in this pattern. You know, I get a lot of clients that say, you know, I'm seeing a therapist and why is it not working?
Yeah.
Or I feel like I'm moving forward, but this really annoys me. And it's like, well, let's get to that root cause. And that's what this book is. It's about getting to the root cause, speaking your truth, and trusting your inner wisdom and living a peaceful life. So, yeah.
And when do you anticipate that it will be released?
Ooh, I'm not sure yet.
Okay. I
Maybe sometime
understand.
next year. Yeah.
Well, you let me know when it does. We'll have you back on the show again. So when your book is released, so I'd love to have you talk about that. And I'm kind of guessing that I took this little quote off of your website as well. And so I'm kind of thinking that this is part of the book as well. So that you believe that when you heal your trauma, you heal your life. And when you heal your trauma, you heal your inner child. And I thought that was beautiful.
Thank you. Because our inner child, that's what is crying out. All of us have an inner child. We've all grown up being, you know, la free and silly, running around. And then society puts all their issues onto us, or we have generational patterns that, you know, have been passed down to us. But when we come back to that inner child will always tell us who we are. You know, even within the book, it will talk about inner child and all that kind of stuff. The mother wound, the father wound, the sibling wounds, which people don't realize. But when you hear your inner child, you can nourish her the way she wants to be nourished. You can mother her the way you wanted to be mothered. You can father her the way you wanted to be fathered. You know, you can be sibling, you can be a sibling to her. But when you really listen to her, that's when you feel free. You know, when I have moments of like running around, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I talk to my inner child, say, hey, what do you want right now? She's like, I want to play. Okay, cool. Let's go for a dance. What do you want to do now? I want to go running. Okay, let's go running. Because she has been there with me from the moment I was born. Just like yours has been there with you from the moment you were born. But we've forgotten her when society tells us who to be. And that's where we get anxiety. That's where we get depression. That's where we get frustrated with people. It's because we've forgotten to give her we're giving the love to everybody else, but we've forgotten to give her the love. And when you give her the love, she will nourish you like there's nothing. No tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, plus when we're not paying attention to her, we're actually living a different life.
Yeah.
And we're not being the person that we were meant to be.
Yeah.
And we're just doing ourselves a disservice. And no wonder why so many people are unhappy and depressed and anxious.
And it's kind of going back to that word selfish, you know. So when people say, as a woman, you're being selfish, well, actually, no, I'm nourishing my inner child.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Write that down. That is really good. I love it when we have these pearls of wisdom that just kind of crop out of nowhere when we're having conversations. And I do believe that, if we would have more conversations, if we would have, tell our stories and share our stories, which is why I do this show, that the world would be a better place because we could understand each other more and we could learn from each other. Rather than just, well, you're wrong, I'm right, go away. That's just a really silly way to live, because how do you learn? How do you grow? If you're not listening to other people, other cultures, other generations? You take what works for you and you just, get rid of the rest.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, even for me, like, the reason I started my podcast was because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. I want them to have a support mechanism, because it was really hard, not knowing anybody who'd gone through or like had done the healing. I didn't know anybody, and I was trying to find them. And when I created the podcast, I realized there were so many people with different stories. And if that could just help one, listener, I've done my job.
So tell us a little more about the podcast.
Oh, sure. So the Inner Light Project is, well, originally I'll explain. It was called Get Inspired with Gurds, but then I had my operation in 2017 and I woke up and heard Inner Light Project, because we all have a light within us. And I thought, wow, that's so true. And so the podcast is all about, self-healing experts, people who've come through difficulties in their life. It's all about self-love, acceptance. It's all about helping highly sensitive women come back to their power, because I'm actually a highly sensitive person, and it took me till 2017, 18 to realize that. And what that means is you're absorbing other people's energy, but you don't know how to protect yourself. So the podcast is all about helping them to grow, to evolve, to stand up, speak their truth, listen to other stories from other powering women and men who have taken their power back and are living in their light.
Beautiful. Now, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at I am Gurds. That's IAMGURDS. I'm on Facebook, Gurds Hundal. So Gurds and then my surname, HUNDAL. You can type in my name on Google and my website comes up. I'm literally everywhere. You can find, if you type in Inner Light Project, I come up on the Apple or Spotify. So yeah, you can find me everywhere if you just type my name in.
So if you can't find Gurds, you're not looking.
Yeah.
And
been around a while.
Do you have any, like on your website, can people contact you? Do you have a blog? Do you have a place where they can get some tips or any more advice than what we've gotten? I mean, you've given so much wonderful information on the show already, but is there any other way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, they can contact me on my website. My newsletter will be coming back up soon, so they'll be able to just sign up again.
Good.
And just read like the weekly kind of advice and tips, or just go to my Instagram. I give so much content on there to help you really take your power back. And you can just message me on there as well.
Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
I feel like something's coming up. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you can transform your life around. You have the ability to heal, whether that's a health condition, emotional pain, a grief, trauma, any traumatic experience in life, you can heal it, but it's listening to that wisdom from within and asking for a sign to happen. And I know a lot of people out there who are currently going through health conditions. Like I too understand that. And I had chronic kidney disease and I'd actually healed it. But it was asking the divine to give me an answer and say, can you show me the way? And when I listened, this book came into my hand. It was by a medical medium and he actually helped me to heal. So I've taken my power back in regards to my health, where I was told that I never was able to. So you really do have the gift to heal, but you have to listen from within and say you're ready. When you're ready, all the answers will come your way.
That is incredibly powerful. I knew something was coming up. That was pretty good for just right there on the spot. My goodness.
I have no idea what I just said.
You'll have to listen to the podcast. It was brilliant. It really was. But I do have one really quick question for you, because it was kidney disease and you had surgery on your kidney. Have you ever done any Chinese medicine, any acupuncture? Because I know in Chinese medicine, I think the kidneys are associated with fear.
Yeah. So basically with my kidney, I was born with a kidney defect, but I wasn't told that until I hit 29 years old. So my whole life, I had no idea I had a right kidney defect. And the crazy bit is my mum worked as a nurse in the kidney renal unit. So I was like, oh my, some past life thing going on here. But the thing with my kidney was it was smaller, but also I had a knot in my utera. So I didn't know any of this. So they had to cut out 5 centimeters out and stitch me back up. And like I had a stent in and had to regenerate my kidney. And like there was a lot going on. So I did try lots of healing methods and modalities, but nothing was working. And as you can imagine, not knowing for 29 years of your life. But I know acupuncture, I had it before, and I do notice a difference in like my health when I've done it. But what really helped me were the herbs and the celery juice, funny enough, which medical medium talks about. So I was dehydrated. My body was dehydrated. I'd had a lot of heavy metals in my body. As you can imagine, when you take so many medications, there's so many things that you're pumping into your body without realizing. So I needed to flush that all out for it to re-heal. So that's kind of how I actually healed it, and just following a very healthy protocol, removing like gluten, lots of different things out of my body. And within 7 months, I healed it.
Wow.
I reversed it, which it still blows my mind right now.
Yeah, that is pretty mind-boggling, because you lived with it for 29 years, and then in 7 months you were able to heal after that. That's incredible.
The thing is, I didn't even know I had kidney disease until 2020. They didn't tell me. I had to discover it. I actually had to go through a charity and find out, like, is this kidney disease? Because I was getting swelling in my legs, my hands. I couldn't get out of bed hardly. And I questioned it. And then they told me to get my blood test and ask for certain things. And I asked for those, and they diagnosed me. And then I took it back to my consultant. So kind of just hearing what I'm talking about right now, never take no for an answer. Always do your research, always question things, always get second or third opinion when it comes to your health, because not every doctor knows what they're talking about. I had situations where doctors wanted to remove my kidney, and my intuition said no. My gut was saying to me, you need to save your kidney no matter what. And I kept fighting back, and I saved my kidney. I had the operation. So always trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right regarding your health, regarding a relationship, regarding your finances, reach out and keep asking people, but also find the people that can help you.
Thank you so much for bringing that up and pointing that out, because that is so true. Oftentimes we'll just take, we go to the experts and we just automatically presume that they know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They have all the answers. And I always tell my clients and everybody that I talk to, you are your own expert. It is your responsibility to, when you get a diagnosis, when you get the treatment protocol, whatever, you need to do your research and see if it's right for you. Because everybody's different. We're not machines. We're not, a piece of equipment. And when you're putting, like you said, the medications that you were taking, they do have side effects and consequences.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize is that doctors don't have the answers for everything. They don't know themselves. And the thing is, I'm not trying to disregard doctors and what they do, because they're amazing at what they do. If we didn't go to them, we wouldn't know what's going on with us. So there is that gift there of knowing what's happening with us, but it's also questioning the system. Is it going to help you? But also the way I kind of do it is I have the scans and the tests from them, but then I go the holistic way and try to heal that way. So you're getting the best of both worlds. But when you're heavily reliant on medication, it's just like trauma. You're not getting to the root cause. You're just numbing the pain. Just like trauma, you're numbing the pain with alcohol, medication, toxic energy, drugs. It's the same thing. You have to get to the root cause, whether it's your health or your trauma. You have to get there. And when you do, then you can take your power back. But again, as women, we have been taught again that we have to rely on somebody. Again, women within the medical system have been treated really disrespectfully. Decades. And I remember talking that with you in the podcast, it's so important for us to take our power back. And yes, you might have annoying consultants and people talking down to you like you're a child. I've had many talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and I've had to put my foot down and say, hey, I'm your client. What is this? I didn't come here to be lectured. I came here to find answers. But they might not like you having that power and that knowledge, because they're so used to telling people what to do. But you find the right team. You find the right people that are going to help you, that are going to respect you, that are going to respect your body. Because as women, our bodies haven't been respected within the medical system.
And that goes back, hundreds
centuries,
of years. Centuries. It really does. It goes back. Yeah. And for anybody who is listening, because this is fantastic advice. And that's what I do now is, I have my medical practitioner or my PCP, that we can communicate, and he understands that, okay, she's here to have this cleared just to make sure it isn't anything serious. And then he sends me on my way to go do whatever, I need to do for myself with the alternative healthcare modalities that I use. And that's what so we have that understanding. But if I go to somebody who just right away says, no, this is what you're going to do, and this, it's like, okay, see ya, you grab your purse and you run and you say, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And go on your way.
Or even if you've had some scans done and they haven't even looked at the scans and they're assuming, walk away. I've had that where they say, right, this is it. This is what you're having. You're like, hold up, what does the scan say? And they're like, oh, 1 second. And they haven't even looked at the scan.
Oh my gosh.
Because there's people that, like doctors, we need to understand society is not how it was before. Like the medical system isn't the same where you had 20 minutes with a consultant. Now it's like your 10 minutes. So they don't even have time to look at your stuff. So that's why you need to question it and get a second opinion, because they might be wrong. You know, you might end up having something that you don't need because they don't know what they're talking about.
That's pretty frightening.
But what we're trying to say is there is a power to heal. It's that self-awareness like we've talked about. Have that self-awareness. If your mind is like, your gut and your mind is like, this doesn't feel right, trust that. If that person doesn't feel right talking to you, trust that. That medicine doesn't feel right, trust that. Like there's always signs there. You just have to listen from within.
And remember that you are your own expert.
Yes. Because no one's going to know you in the space of 5 minutes.
True. And you know yourself better than anybody else does if you pay attention and
especially
you develop that.
Child.
Exactly. And get that self-awareness. Train your self-awareness. It can be done.
Because your inner child will always guide you. Your inner child will be like, nope, don't do that. oh, that feels nice. She will always remind you what is right for you. And if somebody is taking advantage of you, overstepping the mark, she will scream inside. That's the rage. She's like, oh.
Gurds, it has been wonderful talking to you. I mean, you know, it just blows me away every time we have a conversation. I just love talking to you, and I'm so excited about your new book. And I know what it's like, so it takes time to get it out there from, you know, the brain to the paper. So I'm really excited about that. So congratulations, even on that journey.
Thank you. I'm just so happy to talk to you again. You're such an amazing soul, and you've gone through a lot as well. And, you know, I can see your books as well. They're so amazing. And
thank you.
You are a powerhouse, and what you do is so powerful. And thank you again for just having this conversation with me. It's just like having a divine chat with you.
Well, we'll have a few more in the future. I know we will. And I really want to have you back when that book comes out. And, you know, you can share it with the audience and share more of your wisdom, because as you said, we are always going through this process. And once you start that journey of healing, it's not like you come to a dead end and it's like, okay, I'm done now. You're always growing and learning and improving on what the quality of your life, as long as you keep an open mind.
It gets easier. So when you do have to face something, it's not as hard because you've dealt with the heavy stuff. So even with my kidney thing, it was horrific, don't get me wrong, but it would have been a lot worse if I hadn't done the healing before.
Absolutely. Very good point, because once you do go on that healing journey, the hits, our life is full of hits. I always say that, but they're not quite as bad because you learn and you know how to deal with them more effectively, efficiently, and with a lot less drama and trauma.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
You can write that down too. Okay, Gurds, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you as well. And do go to Gurds' website. I've got all the links on the description of the show and the show notes. Connect with her, follow her on social media, and stick up for her when those haters start to, kind of crash on her, because she doesn't deserve that. Beautiful soul. Thank you so much for listening. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.